gentlemen, Global Marketing Manager for Blue Star, Dean Reverman.
Good morning, Vartechers. Thank you all for coming here today on our great day 2. Did everyone have a good day 1 yesterday? Yes, that's right. Hopefully we had a good time on Code Zone, getting in front of all the products. We had some solution sessions for you yesterday to continue the educational experience. And then, oh my gosh, if you were swimming in the pool last night, you were having a good time then. The pool party to close it out last night. But we've got another great day queued up for you here today at Vartech on day 2. We're going to continue the education. We're going to continue the dialogue, if you will, with today's industry panel. My name is Dean Reverman. I am the Global Marketing Manager at Blue Star, and really, really happy to have you here today. But let's give it a big round of applause real quick. Again, last night, phenomenal time. Datalogic WASP, HP, and Star Micronics, thank you so very much for the pool party last night. I hope everybody got a Star towel. They had some out there. That was a great, phenomenal time. And, the hotel the whole day was like, hey, I don't think you guys should go out there. The weather's not looking so good, and things of that nature. But we pulled the trigger and make it happen, and the good Lord shined down on us and kept the rain away. So hopefully he'll do that again today out at the beach party, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But again, this morning's general session is a special presentation. The idea here is to try to get you guys some outside opinions of what's happening in the marketplace, what's going on as it relates to all the general topics that are having an impact on our channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the industry, what emerging technologies are out there, disruption, IoT. Have you heard of that acronym? I know we've been talking a lot about it today. Security. We'll talk a little bit about millennials. I think Jeff Havens was a big hit yesterday. Yeah? Did you like Jeff? Thought he did a pretty good job. And even though I don't have a sea lion for my introduction, we'll still have a good discussion here. And then the final thing is opportunities, right? We're trying to look for where those opportunities are, not only today, in the short term, but also how we can start directing our business into the future. So we've got queued up a phenomenal panel today, really diverse perspectives that we'll be able to give you as we, again, ask questions as it relates to some of those main topics of IoT, security, millennials, future opportunities, and things of that nature. What I'd like to do now is introduce our panelists and ask them to come up one by one so that we can get things kicked off here. First, we'd like to ask Vanessa Foden to come up. Vanessa is with Intel. She is the Retail Mobility and Payments Marketing Manager for Intel. If you haven't done so yet, please stop by their booth. We have an Intel partner program that we're trying to drive attendance for, and we've been doing a good job so far. But stop by, make sure you stop by the Intel booth to find out more about their partner program. Welcome, Vanessa. Next we have David Krebs. David Krebs is an executive at VDC Research. He's the Executive Vice President at VDC Research. David was with us we did a mobility event over in Bad Gastein earlier in the year. And since then, we've been using him a lot on some of our panels. So David, welcome, and thank you for being here. Next up, we have John Stewart. He is the editor-in-chief at Digital Transactions Magazine. This is the second time we've asked John to be a part of our industry panel. He was with us back in New Orleans. So John, it's good to see you again. He'll give us the perspective again from kind of that digital transaction, the payment processing, that kind of an angle. So welcome John to the stage, please, everybody. Next, we have a familiar face. We have Jim Roddy, who is the reseller ISV business advisor for Vantiv. Jim formerly was the president at Jameson Publishing, where he was there for over a decade. Recently joined Vantiv as an advisor. Jim's always great to have you here today as well. So thanks for being here. And finally, Our last panelist will be Max Coppin. Max is the partner manager over at Google. This is the first VARTech we've had the opportunity to have Google participate, and we look forward to the outlook from a Google perspective on what's happening in the industry with Max Coppin. So thanks so much, Max, for joining us today. So let's go ahead and get started. When you think about it, when you take a seat back, and I know what's usually on most people's mind, and when I was a VAR, our company was always looking at, hey, where are the opportunities, what's going on, what is the state of the industry, if you will. So maybe I thought it would be a good idea to kind of start off with what the trends, what the state of the industry is. And what I'd like to do is we'll kind of just go one by one, and Vanessa, I'm going to ask you to answer first, if you will. But let's talk about the landscape. What you're seeing in the channel. Give us the state of the industry from your perspective, if you will. Where is business soft? Where is it growing? Those types of things. So Vanessa, why don't you kick us off on the state of the industry?
Okay, thank you. So to start off, we promised, we were sitting over here, and we promised it might get a little spicy, and that we promised not to agree, as panelists always tend to agree. So we'll mix it up a little bit, I'm sure. So what we are seeing from an Intel perspective, and we've been engaged with the channel, and the channel is very important to Intel's success. So thank you, all of you, by the way. So what we're seeing is that the number of resellers that we work with, it hasn't changed. But what is changing is mergers and acquisitions. So we're seeing a lot of the big guys get bigger. And we see, as this is happening, we're also seeing a lot of opportunity. And we're seeing that opportunity and growth happen in the Internet of Things. And we're seeing this opportunity as we see the OT, the operations, and the IT, and how that's really blending together, and all the opportunities that come with that, and bring out that bigger solution of what we can do with our partners in IoT. So that's where I see we're going to continue to see a lot of growth. Intel as well has banked on that. So depending on which research magazine you look at, Intel tends to be in the top 10 of IoT in industry leadership because we have banked on that as being the future. And again, that blends back to that opportunity of OT and IT.
Very good, very good. David, you bring a perspective from the research angle, right? You're kind of always looking at the information on a daily basis. What are you seeing? What's your perspective on the state of the industry, where things are soft, where things are growing?
Sure. So, yeah, we've seen a lot of consolidation in this space over the last couple of years that has certainly gotten everyone's attention. And also from a channel perspective, what does it mean? Does it mean greater sort of specialization when you're starting to see this level of sort of OEM-based consolidation? But now the consolidation is sort of taking a different turn in the sense that it's not just sort of driven by gaining market share amongst sort of traditional OEMs. We're now starting to see acquisition of ISVs, of solution providers. And that consolidation is also happening within the channel. We're seeing channel organizations acquiring software capabilities and greater service capabilities to offset some of the business models that they've been traditionally practicing. So I think that's it's certainly creating change. When you're looking at it from a core sort of technology perspective, looking at it a little bit specifically at areas that we cover in mobility and in data collection technologies, 2016 is a bit of a soft year. When we're looking at overall adoption. I think on the mobile side, a lot of that is tied, and we'll probably talk about this on this panel, a lot of that is still tied to uncertainty around OS and the migration from sort of legacy platforms to more modern solutions. Now that spells opportunity as well when you're looking at it from an installed base of whatever the number might be, 15, 20 million devices that ultimately will need to be upgraded, updated over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years. But there's still, even though we've certainly seen Android make inroads and gain share, there still is, a fair amount of tension as to what direction I want to go with my business and where I want to make my investments. So I think that over time, will sort of itself out, but it still provides a little bit of a headwind or at least has been over the course of this year. And in the data collection space, the barcode scanning, label printing space, what we've seen is, coming on the heels of a very strong 2015, also a little bit of a pullback, of the market. I think there's certainly, sort of macroeconomic implications that we're seeing affect that. But long-term outlook, we're still seeing some very strong growth, strong opportunity for those technologies, especially as we think of some of these larger themes around connected endpoints and the types of solutions that we're trying to enable.
Very good. John, I know obviously your perspective is a little bit different coming from the digital transaction side, but give us a little bit of a view on the state of the industry from your perspective. What's happening in the marketplace, things of that nature. What challenges maybe are out there as well that VARs are facing?
Yeah, sure. We're a little bit, as Dean said, a little bit specialized in that we're all about electronic payments. So what we're seeing are some of the obvious things right now. There is, for regulatory reasons, I suppose you'd say, quite a surge, obviously, in EMV currently, and with it, NFC, because although it's not always turned on and not always clearly understood, the capability comes with the devices, and that opens up a lot of possibilities for mobile wallets like Android Pay. Another facet that's getting a lot of attention and is going to be growing, I think, in this sector of the business is fraud and security, and particularly fraud and chargebacks. Merchants right now who aren't equipped to handle EMV are getting inundated with chargebacks, and there's a business out there for people who can help them manage that, and that's a nascent business that hasn't really come to everyone's attention yet and hasn't really been well developed. But they're seeing this stuff for the first time because obviously the card issuers dealt with it before. So those are probably the hot spots really in the payments sector of the business. Possibly also obviously the mobile wallet space, but that's kind of tied in intimately with the development of and the rollout of EMV in a strange kind of way.
Very good. Yeah, and maybe we'll get a little bit deeper into the security notion here in just a little bit. Jim, what are your thoughts as it relates to the state of the channel and things of that nature?
Yeah, thank you, Dean. So I work for a payments company, Vantiv Integrated Payments, but the view that I have is broader beyond payments. I'm heading up a business advisory program inside of Vantiv where I'm working with their partners and finding out what are their biggest challenges and then providing some services, business advice in terms of helping them with those challenges. And so I've been on board with the company about 3 months now, and so I've spent a lot of time connecting with the leading resellers and ISVs and also some folks who are struggling. And so there's some common themes that I see among those resellers that are really where I'd want to reflect the state of the channel. For years, I think everybody here has been hearing about you've got to provide more services, shrinking hardware margins, you need to be able to adapt your business. And so the folks who have heeded that advice, those are the ones who I'm seeing have a lot of success now. The decisions they made 2 or 3 years ago are really impacting their organization right now. So it really resonated with me that you can't just have one great idea and carry that on for decades. That might have been the case before where you had a certain region or you had a certain hardware that you represented, and so you were set for life and you were on easy street. And so it seems like the organizations that are able to adapt, that have a learning environment, not just the person at the top is the one who's the genius and makes all the decisions, but all the way throughout your organization, you have an environment of adaptability, of learning, everybody looking to see what's around the corner, what's next, what can we do. Those are the folks who are having a much stronger year as opposed to the folks who are just kind of struggling. So the ones who are doing it the best, I saw 2 really common themes beyond having that ability to adapt. One is they are intentional about increasing their recurring revenue, whether that's through payment processing, but now they're really expanding into managed services. And so I even saw at this event yesterday. So I've been attending events on, I always say there are two sides of the channel. There's a data collection point of sale side of the channel, which is this group, and then there's more that networking, managed services, general computing side of the channel. And for years they kind of looked at first they ignored each other, like they didn't even know the other portion existed, right? And then they started looking at each other and saying, well, that's kind of interesting. And now I'm seeing a lot of the folks in the point of sale data collection are really moving towards managed services. I had a couple people introduce themselves yesterday as an MSP, as a managed services provider, and that is never a phrase that I hear unless it's coming out of my own mouth at point of sale or data collection events. So the shift to recurring revenue, the as a service business model, managed services, that's a big commonality among successful resellers. And another is that they're very focused, niche focused. You can't be all things to all people. They take a very focused slice of hospitality, a very focused approach to warehousing or distribution or retail. And so they're seeing that they are now considered legitimate trusted advisors. They're not just bringing technology and hardware solutions, they're bringing actual advice to their end users, to merchants or whoever their customers may be. So that's a trend that I'm seeing, Dean, is there's not everybody's doing great or everybody's doing poor, but there's definitely the folks who are doing recurring revenue, managed services, and really focusing on their niche. They're the ones who are thriving today.
Yeah. There's some common themes in there, right? And we've been talking about them for years. Max, give us your insight on the industry as it relates to the channel. What challenges maybe do you see as well, or just your opinion on that, on the state of the industry?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, as you asked originally, how are things going? Growth is good. We're up to whatever it is, 1.5 billion devices, activating millions a day, et cetera, et cetera. So the numbers on that side are great. I think a couple of years ago, probably about 2.5 years ago, there was a decision, a conscious decision from the Android side to go out and really engage with channel and this particular kind of area of the market. Whereas I think historically it had been seen as arguably maybe a little bit too small and challenging, and it was that sort of area where everyone said, yeah, interesting, but lots of complicated questions and not something that we really want to focus on. So that shift came a couple of years ago. We set up Android for Work and really started, like I say, engaging with many of the people who are here, the OEMs and partners and so on. And since then, we've through the certainly for the last 2 or 3 from Lollipop onwards, Android releases, really kind of started to see much more sort of widespread adoption. A lot of it has been us putting more effort into our sort of education and outreach around how you can turn what is viewed really as a sort of consumer, maybe millennial focused, to reference yesterday, millennial focused device, into something that could be used for point of sale, warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really been our kind of effort and something that we've seen success with. But we appreciate that the upgrade cycles and refresh cycles and so on mean that obviously it's going to take a while to get out there.
Yeah, very good. And as we go through this, I did want to mention we do have a couple mic runners out in the audience. We want to make this interactive as well. If you have a question, if something comes to mind, please raise your hand and we'll get a microphone over to you so that we can have you involved in the discussion as well. We touched on a lot of things there, whether it's IoT, connected growth, mobile wallets, things of that nature. It kind of gets me to think a little bit, and maybe we can parlay into the next topic, which is emerging technologies. As resellers, people are always tapped into what's the next, right? Where should I be next? Or what is happening next? Where should I start shifting my business so that I can take advantage of some of these emerging technologies? At the end of the road, and maybe Jim, this is a little bit what you were talking about, successful resellers expand beyond sometimes of what they're doing. They turn into an MSP. Yes, it's okay to focus, and maybe that's a trend of where a lot of folks are going, but also there's the need to develop that ecosphere around their business as it relates to some of these emerging technologies. So let's talk about that. When you put on the hat of a future solutions provider, what should those individuals look like? Jim, maybe you could help us out here and start in, or maybe dive a little bit deeper. So what are you seeing, or what do you think on emergency technologies, or where should the VARs be investing, if you will?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. And just to clarify, from a focus standpoint, it doesn't mean that they just sell 1 or 2 pieces of technology. They focus on the niche vertical, and they sell them everything. They're the total solution provider, and everything that person needs or that company needs from a technology standpoint, that's what they sell. So they're focused on that vertical, not necessarily one technology. So earlier this year attended Business Solutions Retail IT VAR of the Future conference, which Blue Star and many other folks here were a sponsor of. And a big theme that came out of that was we interviewed somebody who we put on stage as the retail IT VAR of the future, and they said, if it doesn't have recurring revenue and if it can't scale, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Like, that was really their focus. And so even if it meant some short-term gain, they said, no, we're really going to be looking for those things. So again, if it has recurring revenue, if it can scale, then we're interested. I also talked to a reseller last week and asked them what things that they're working on right now. And the way that they set up their planning is they do everything today to prepare themselves to be able to double their business 5 years from now. And so you hear that and you think, well, that sounds like a great theory, but everybody talks about that, and you look them up 5 years later and they're maybe flat or up 10% or something like that. They haven't doubled. And so I said, well, how's that been going? And he said, well, we've been doing that for 15 years and we haven't missed yet. Like, we've always gone over doubling. So there's a real thing about, thinking big from that standpoint. So from an emerging standpoint, the resellers who I'm talking to now about where do you see that your revenues and your profits are going to be, and so they do see it in that total solution provider. So what they're adding on to increase from a margin standpoint is a lot of things from a managed services standpoint. And so they talk about having PSA software, so professional services automation software, and really taking full advantage of that's going to allow them to manage their customer base, not just from face-to-face, but they'll be able to track everything they do in there. Then they're moving into remote monitoring and management, so they can monitor the network, they can monitor security, and they're charging fees for those things. So they're getting these softwares and applying them to all their different companies, and then they're charging them, different rates for that, and they're able to have a lot more profit. They can have fewer employees covering way more customers, and so that's a lot, again, from the managed services technologies that they're offering. So I guess that's one end of it from a fundamental standpoint. I'm also seeing in retail, and we talked about it yesterday on our payment panel, that omnichannel in retail is everything. The customer is demanding that they want to be able to buy a product anytime, anywhere. So if they go in the store and see it, and then they're somehow in a different store later, they want to be able to order it on the phone. They want to be able to order it from home and have it delivered everywhere and pick it up in the store, and they want maximum flexibility, whether it's a large retailer or whether it's a small to medium-sized retailer. So omnichannel is a big thing in those technologies, and then digital wallets as well. That is something that folks are looking for to be really on the leading edge, and it all ties in. You have to have payment and data security in order to pull off that true omnichannel ordering and payment services.
Yeah.
So those what I see would be some of the emerging technologies that successful resellers are embracing.
David, maybe we can kick it over to you, from a research perspective. Again, you've got your ear to the ground as it relates to things that are occurring, trends that are happening in the marketplace. What is that data telling you from an emergence technology, or what a future solutions provider looks like, if you will?
Yeah, so maybe I'll pick up a couple of points that Jim had mentioned and build on those a little bit. So from a technology perspective and a go-to-market perspective, we did some research recently when we asked, okay, when you're amongst decision makers, when you're looking for a solution provider, what are the things that you look for? What are the things that ultimately help you make that decision? And by far, the number one selection driver was security. And security, the solution security capabilities, security, understanding. So security is, especially in today's day and age, when we're thinking about the amount of information that's, being processed, and the identities of individuals that's potentially being accessed, is by and far the greatest requirement. But looking at it also from some of the disruption that we're seeing, from an industry perspective, to talk a little bit about Omni. Omni obviously omnichannel has been a big trend over the last couple of years. You go to NRF, and it seems like everyone is sort of touting omnichannel capabilities. And what we're seeing happen here is, because certainly Amazon and e-commerce is driving a lot of the growth in sort of overall retail, but it still is 7, 8, 9% of overall retail spend. So the lion's share, the vast majority, is still through traditional brick and mortar. But as Jim had mentioned, customers want flexibility. They want options. But they also want sort of that experience to be seamless across channels. And if I see something in a store or see something online and go pick it up in a store, they want that experience to sort of naturally progress. And what we've seen with omnichannel with retailers is some really interesting developments. One is as they try to introduce solutions like buy online, pick up in store, or in the UK they call click and collect. What we're finding is that there is a huge disparity between retailers who are doing it really, really well and get it right, and those that really muck it up. And the disparity comes in fulfillment times, the ability to communicate with our customers, and ultimately also what our research is showing us is that sometimes as what's old is new again, is that especially when we're looking at fulfillment of purchases, a lot of it's being done out of a warehouse or a DC, but some's being done out of a store, is that the inventory accuracy of a lot of retailers today, especially in store, is 50-60% perhaps at best. So the real challenge comes back to it is I can't provide a strong omni-channel experience if I have no idea of where my inventory is. Yeah. So I think that we're starting to see a greater focus again within retail on providing that in-store inventory visibility, which has been an age-old problem. The question is, how do you fix it? RFID certainly presented some interesting options, but at a price point that was unsustainable. But we've even seen in RFID a nice rebound over the last couple of years on a slightly more sort of tempered scale. And it's also having an impact or influence in the warehouse in terms of how I'm thinking about the warehouse, how I'm designing it. And as I shift from sort of pallet-based fulfillment to item-level-based fulfillment, and what that means in terms of technologies I'm deploying. We're certainly seeing, investment in robotics and vision-guided solutions, at the bleeding edge. But even with more traditional workflows, the idea that I want, as a retailer, the number one expense in a warehouse is labor still. I want to optimize that workforce. So workforce analytics and really understanding the workflows and how to optimize those. Those are some of the areas where we're starting to see some really interesting, some really unique, and some really positive outcomes.
Yeah, expansion, if you will.
Acquiring and looking at mobile technology. And so, we've certainly seen, a couple things happen as a result. One of the things that's happened as a result is there's set a new expectation in terms of, what a mobile solution should look and feel like. How am I interacting with it? How intuitive is it? And this is an industry where change is sometimes hard to come by. I mean, we're looking at, the technologies that we've deployed in warehouses and the idea that, a terminal emulation solution that was in vogue maybe 20 years ago is still sort of the primary way that mobile devices are being managed in a warehouse. It works, but the idea that you're going to throw a touch-centric no keyboard device into that environment is still for many people very shocking. So I think that certainly has had an impact. And when we're looking at mobile, and we'll probably talk about OS at some point, but when we're looking at how this industry has responded, it's been slow, but it's now coming around where we're looking at it from the design of certain devices and more ergonomically oriented devices, and certainly more touch-centric devices has come to the fore. But it's also, forget the device for a second, it's also what are we doing with that device, and what types of capabilities am I delivering? And I think one of the big challenges still here in this space is the agility around which we can develop and deploy and support mobile solutions. There's a huge shortage today in terms of capabilities when it comes to mobile application development. When you're looking at the demand relative to the supply, the time it takes to develop a mobile application, takes 5, 6, 7 months. The cost associated with that is can be quite significant. So anything that can be done to streamline that process, to make it more agile, and we're certainly starting to see sort of rapid development solutions come to the fore. And in the enterprise, it's perhaps a little bit more forgiving. Doesn't have to be perhaps as beautiful or as sexy as it needs to be in maybe the consumer space, but just getting mobile applications up and running and prototyping capabilities is something that has been certainly a challenge, but I think also represents a significant opportunity, and it's certainly a disruptive theme around this space.
Anybody else with some thoughts as it relates to disruption? Vanessa, maybe, what's some of your thoughts as it relates to some of the forces that are out there? Maybe opportunities, right? Mobile, portable solutions, as David was just talking about. There are disruptive forces out there. Do you see, what are some disruptions that you're seeing out there?
So I see the disruptions as opportunities, definitely. So whether it's disruption by bring your own device or utilizing mobile solutions that are provided to you in store, down to how do you keep these devices secure. So one of the things I love about disruption, the idea of bring your own device, is one of the biggest concerns we have when we talk to our enterprise customers is how do we make sure these don't walk out the door? When it's bring your own device, that's not going to walk out the door. That is that person's device, and now it's probably the most secure device you have in the entire store. But on top of that, though, the disruption is, okay, how do I protect that device? How do I work with that within my network and keep my network safe? So there's a lot of opportunities with that disruption on how you're bringing in devices. And then, mobility, coming from the mobility world, I love everything that you said, right? Because we do see things moving towards more of a mobile solution, whether it's, in the retail world, whether it's a mobile solution that's really in a fixed position, and it just so happens to always say in that fixed position. The disruption for your end customers, it's driving down the cost. So there's a lot of opportunity overall of driving down that cost for your partners while providing a solid solution.
Absolutely. And so maybe that's a good parlay into some of the future opportunities as well. So disruption creates opportunities. John, maybe we can kick it back to you as it relates to some of the future opportunities, and actually maybe we'll go around, go down the panel here and talk about it. Resellers always have the hat on, again, where are the future opportunities? And we've talked a lot about maybe golden nuggets is another phrase for it. What are some of the golden nuggets that are out there? So when you look down the future and think about the future, what opportunities or what do you think we need to be sensitive to as it relates to 2017 and starting to change businesses, if you will, and adopting to some of that?
Yeah, for the what you might think of as the near-term future, 2017, 2018, probably at least within the payments industry, the preoccupation is going to be with unfortunately, the ongoing EMV rollout, which has not rolled out quite as smoothly as everyone might have hoped. There's simply a lot of opportunity there in just helping merchants deploy that technology. Many of them need a lot of help deploying it, understanding it, avoiding the chargeback liability. As I mentioned before, that's a developing business opportunity, in fact. And then beyond that, of course, getting them to, we talked about mobility a few minutes ago, to switch on the NFC capability that's latent in those terminals so that merchants can begin accepting mobile wallets. And that, in fact, is one of the things that's been holding back wallet acceptance or wallet usage by consumers. One of the reasons that Apple Pay, for all of the publicity it got and still receives, has been a bit of a disappointment is that there haven't been enough places to accept those applications. Simply because the merchants, if they have begun accepting EMV, in many cases aren't even aware that they have the near field capability. So the merchants, really at the root of what I'm saying, I guess, is that the merchants require a lot of education. There's nothing technical about this. There's no technology based to this necessarily. It's just someone who come in and tell them what they are capable of doing with these new acceptance devices. And then I think we can start seeing the ball rolling towards 90, 95, 100% EMV acceptance, and the certification queues starting to wind down, which they are starting to, I think, finally, and towards mobile wallet acceptance, which is probably the the greatest near-term goal that we might start seeing towards the end of 17, beginning of 18.
Yeah. Let's go this way, David. Maybe you can give us some of your thoughts on 2017. I don't know if you have a crystal ball on at your office. You're looking at the research and you can peer into the future, but what do you see in 2017 and beyond?
We just have a dartboard and we sort of put the blindfold on and
There you go. Now we got it. That's right.
Makes a lot of sense.
So I'll go back to sort of a comment that I made in my opening remarks and sort of make it about that, bring it back to sort of the opportunity, this sort of latent opportunity of modernizing what is a legacy installed base of rugged mobile devices. And so just talk about that a little bit. I mean, these are devices that obviously are supporting some of the most sort of business or mission critical workflows. So robustness, reliability, and support are absolutely acute. But what's been happening in this space, as probably everyone in the room is well aware, is the dominant platforms for these devices are essentially end-of-life or are on life support right now, with Windows Mobile and CE essentially riding off into the sunset. So what happens to these devices? So some of these devices potentially are being displaced by sort of consumer devices, but I'd see that consumer impact really a net new or expansion of the TAM as opposed to necessarily a direct replacement. But certainly some of that is happening as well. But the tensions that we've had in the market has been there really hasn't been a what we said is sort of a viable or a strong answer from Microsoft. And that has really opened the door for Android to enter the space as an alternative, because obviously iOS wouldn't be an alternative because that's only available on Apple devices. And so we've seen certainly some traction, with regard to that. We're, probably halfway through this year. I would say, somewhere in the 30s, maybe high 20s is what Android penetration is today in this context. But the question in the room still is, well, Google, they're not exactly an enterprise company. They don't have that background. Can I trust Android as a platform? Fragmentation, security issues, certainly all have addressed that. What is the support? So that certainly has continues to provide some concern and headwinds to this space. I know Microsoft. I'm comfortable with Microsoft, but there really isn't a Microsoft solution. So now we have at least starting to see what the Microsoft solution will look like in Windows 10 IoT Mobile Enterprise. But now the question becomes is back to the consumerization point, these are markets that are increasingly influenced by consumer technologies. When we're looking at market share, Android 80+%, iOS 17%, Windows less than 1%. Those have significant implications from a silicon perspective, from a carrier perspective, and come back to the question as well is how long is Microsoft in this game? In terms of creating that reality. So, we certainly still are seeing, especially in North America with some larger customers, saying that, we're taking a wait and see approach. But, the challenges that we're seeing around, around that solution, and I think the increased stability that we're seeing around Android and the support that it's getting, we're certainly, and, we'd probably say that Android now has a 2-year head start on Windows as a next generation platform. The big question in my mind is, can Android make a case for itself in the warehouse, which I haven't seen happen yet. But even in the warehouse, we're certainly seeing, when we think about the warehouse worker and we think about training that worker, and a lot of that workforce is seasonal. And training them on we're talking about sort of millennials and what they're used to. Training them on a device that has, a keyboard and, as alphanumeric and as a green screen. I mean, that can take 3-4 days sometimes. Whereas you give them something that is much more intuitive, you might have them up and trained in a couple of hours. So I think that those are all sort of, indications of where the market is certainly starting to go. We're still certainly, anticipating, some traction around the Windows side, but I think, certainly the momentum from our perspective right now is squarely behind Android in this space.
Yeah. Vanessa, I don't know if you have a crystal ball at home too, but maybe you could talk a little bit about opportunities.
Well, I don't have my crystal ball with me. I left it in the hotel room. No, all kidding aside, so I'm going to bounce off of a few things I heard today. Some really good opportunities around mobility. I think we're going to continue to see mobility grow in the workspace. That's true if it's medical, that's true if you're in the retail space, and that's true industrial, et cetera. So we're going to continue to see growth opportunity there. There was something, David, that you had noted earlier when you were talking about nodes is, we limit ourselves on utilizing the data that we have available to us. And really, when we talk about the crystal ball, the idea is there's a lot of intelligent data that's available, but unless you analyze it and pull it and make intelligent decisions with it, it really goes to waste. So really, again, that goes back to I see the opportunities growing in IoT, and really what that is what IoT is you're taking data that already exists. Again, going back to what I said earlier about about 85% is already brownfield anyways. It's stuff we're already working with. But it's making and taking that data and making intelligent decisions with it. That's where you really get the crystal ball. That's where you understand trends. That's where you understand what's selling for your customer, what's not selling for your customer, what's your power consumption. So that's where the opportunity really is. And Steve even talked about this yesterday in his introduction. That's where opportunity of growth is. That's where we see opportunity as growth in the industry. Just in retail alone, since I have some industry guys, I said, please don't quote me, but one of the things in retail, just from where we are this year to next year, we anticipate just that growth in between, without giving where our numbers are right now, is over $100 million, and that's built around IoT. That's built around how we can provide those additional services to our customer, and not just the hardware, but what can you do with that data that you're providing with that hardware. And again, that opportunity, and what we all should be thinking about is how do we keep that data secure? So that manageability, security, how do we help them with that? So that's what I see in the future.
Love the term intelligent data. Max, can you give us some of your thoughts on 2017 future opportunities, if you will?
Sure. Unfortunately, no crystal ball either, and we don't have this sort of magic internal Google search of the future. Unfortunately, at least not yet. But yeah, I think we've touched on some kind of relevant items here that are going to be a big sort of trend for the future: BYD, consumerization, and so on, and also the kind of influence of millennials. And I think a lot of it is going to come down to kind of focusing on, as we always look at, focus on the user and what they want to do, and that sort of technology is going to get pulled in from outside and is going to be adopted, and you've got to be, again, I think it's your point around being flexible and able to kind of move with the times. Things like BYOD it's not really a new trend, it's a new acronym, but it started kind of 15, 20 years ago with Wi-Fi and companies saying, well, we don't want to use Wi-Fi, it's not secure, and then everyone brings in their own router and plugs it into the Ethernet port, and that, it's just that the device was different. That's kind of all that's happened. And so I think that, that kind of trend will kind of continue of people saying, it moved through to mobile of, the early days of companies saying, well, iPad was kind of the first mass adopted tablet. Companies didn't want to adopt that, and so how do people deal with it? People bought their own tablet and they forwarded all their emails to their personal device. And again, security kind of went out the window with that kind of thing. So I think adopting the kind of the technology that users want to use is going to be the kind of the best way to deal with some of these challenges that we've talked about. So being kind of agile enough to do that, and hopefully we make it easy for you to do that. And your question around a device, Android in a warehouse and so on. Yes, it's a challenge to have a device or a platform that is appealing to someone who wants to focus on social media and putting pictures up of food and so on and so forth, as we all do, I'm sure. But having a platform that supports that and will support barcode scanning and kind of field service solutions is challenging, but it has huge benefits. Like David touched on the kind of training aspect and the the number of developers out there, again, is something we touched on, I think, yesterday. Adopting Android as a platform has huge benefits because, guess what platform everyone wants to develop for when they come out of college? It's kind of one of two, and obviously we have a number of advantages in this space. So I think those are a few areas where we'll see, definitely continued growth. Some of the other technologies I mentioned, I think, will kind of move their way into more kind of I guess like niche areas and so on. We've seen some implementations of virtual reality and augmented reality. Wearables is another kind of, at the moment, I guess what does my wearable do? It tells the time just about, and it tells me whether I need to get my phone out of my pocket or not. I mean that's essentially all it's being used. It's a notification. It's like an extension of the vibrating feature on the phone. But again, it's something that we've kind of spun up a team to focus on is wearables as an enterprise solution. They could and should have some really interesting use cases where not having to get something out of your pocket, having a free hand, etc., is potentially really beneficial. So again, hopefully it's something where the kind of consumer pool will move into the kind of enterprise use cases that we've all been talking about.
Yeah. Jim, put a bow around it for us. Maybe spend a minute? No, I'm just kidding.
Sure, no.
Or a little bit longer. Put a bow around some of the opportunities, the future opportunities in 2017 from a reseller perspective.
Sure, I guess I always compare business to when I was in school and you had a problem to solve in school and you had a test in school. You just sat there at a desk by yourself and you had to figure it all out on your own, right? You couldn't look off anybody else's paper. The great thing about being in business is, and don't take this out of context, but you can cheat. You can cheat all day long and look off other people's papers, right? You're producing research, you publish a magazine. Everybody here is sharing stories, so you're allowed to cheat off their paper. But if you don't ask, if you don't listen, if you don't go and search, you're not going to find out that information. So I almost feel like the parting words are go out and cheat. But if in the point of sale, payment processing industry, if you just go to the Business Solutions booth, they've got a guide to trends in the industry. Many, many pages from leading resellers, from leading vendors, from leading ISVs. You'll learn all sorts of information in there and folks you can, in addition, reach out to. I mean, I can also say on the back is an ad from Blue Star about hybrid, software as a service, solutions as a service. And so that's another trend that you can be exposed to and you can go find more information about. So we don't need a crystal ball. Nobody has one of those by any means, but there's certainly the opportunity for you to, again, cheat off somebody else's paper and go ahead and do that. Find out what other folks are doing, learn from them, see how you can apply it to your business. Nobody's going to come down. You're not going to be able to Google search what's exactly the best thing for my business. You're closest to your business, so you know what's the best thing your customers need, but you also have that responsibility to lift your head up from the day-to-day operations of your business like a periscope and look around, ask questions, and figure out what could be around the corner. So that takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, but by all means, I encourage folks to do that, and that's how you're going to find out what are the future opportunities for your reseller or software developer business going forward.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. The good news is that I think all of these panelists are in breakout sessions that'll be occurring this afternoon. But please help me in giving them a round of applause for participating in our panel discussion. Very much appreciated.